Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guys Mo Nawara in the Midwest, and we've got Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are kicking off the 2022-23 season with our first video of the year that we will be bringing you as soon as the season starts. Do make sure you're liked and subscribed to that page. We're going to be coming at you guys every single weekday of this NBA regular season and into those playoffs as well. In this kickoff video, we're going to be talking about the finals futures, a couple of MVP picks that we like, some dark horses, things of that nature. We're going to get you guys primed and ready for everything you need to know as the NBA season kicks off. If you do want to throw some futures bets out there, do you want to make sure you have a subscription to a U.S. legal betting site? Make sure that you get the best odds that you can across the board. We do have our great odds tool on thelines.com as well, where you can go ahead and shop all of those lines with that prop finder and odds tool finder to make sure that you are shopping those lines to the best of your ability all NBA season. We are going to kick things off in this video with some finals talk here. Well, I guess some futures and NBA talk for both conferences, really just who you like to come out on top. We will have some other stuff coming your way here in the near future with some division odds, conference odds, things of that nature. Maybe talk about some different awards. But like I said, we're going to kick things off with championship futures. So I'm going to toss it to you first, Nate, to talk to us about maybe one or two teams that you like so far, if you do consider putting any bets down at the current state of what these lines are at for these future bets.
I mean, a couple things I'm looking at early in the season is really just a wait and see approach with the Western Conference. I think there's too much uncertainty there. I mean, the Warriors were able to obviously win last year. The Suns in a quagmire right now with the PR and the way their season ended. The Clippers getting guys back who are extremely injury prone. Nuggets as well. So I'm not placing any preseason bets on those teams for sure. But the East, I think, has a little bit more clarity in terms of I'm fading the Celtics as a championship favorite. I don't think that they've earned that. I think the Bucks are clearly the safest bet once again, and you can get them plus 800. I don't think that's bad odds. If they do come out of the gates much better than they did last season, then that's only going to get shorter. Last season, you were able to kind of capitalize on that slow start, but I think they'll be a lot more whole this year with Brook Lopez not being out the entire year. Great continuity with that group. You look at just their record with Giannis and Middleton, even just active, it's 80 and 40 basically the last couple of years. They're also plus 350 to just get the top seed in the East. And then the second team I'm looking at for some preseason action is the 76ers. And I mean, I don't know how you bet on the James Harden bounce back other than maybe drafting him in the third or fourth round in fantasy. But I think that the narrative that he's completely washed after he looked completely washed down the stretch last year, he's going to be working his ass off to dispel that. I think he's going to come back playing really well this year. If as long as Embiid stays healthy, they will be an absolute bear to deal with. Now they have PJ Tucker, the yin to Harden's yang, weakens Miami at the same time. I do like Philly. I think plus 1,500 is worth a look as a small bet, or maybe better to just take them for the best record in the East as more regular season team, because then you don't have to worry about them wearing down and about Harden flopping in the playoffs again, which does tend to happen.
Yeah, Mo, I don't know about you, but I'm staying away from Philly. Anything you got me a little bit there at the end, Nate, right, by saving what you were saying, in my opinion, in terms of taking the regular season totals. That's fine. Embiid can probably stay healthy through the regular season. The playoffs is where, if you're now saying that James Harden has to take this team to the finals with a hobbled Embiid, that's where you kind of lose me.
I'm a little interested in the Sixers also. I'm with Nate, actually. There's actually a 1,700 available, it looks like, at FanDuel. It's a good look, though, to think about maybe regular season record. I could see that being a little better. We all know what happens to James Harden in the playoffs every year. It's just clockwork. It's not even something like we need to talk about, oh, maybe this is the year something good happens. It's not going to happen, That being said, I don't think they're drawing dead just because Embiid is that good. I mean, it's a different story when Harden doesn't have to be your best player. But, yeah, the regular season, I mean, the way this team can just churn out wins, I mean, they have, basically free points available anytime they run Harden and Embiid pick and roll. I believe it was the best pick and roll in the league last year. And yeah, the Sixers are just definitely interesting. I just think, man, they have a really thin team. I know they added DeAnthony Melton, and he was very good for the Grizzlies, but I don't know. It's just not a team where you're excited if a single player gets hurt, basically.
Well, I would also throw out Tyrese Maxey could be the potential wild card in this one, right? Third year coming in. If he's going to take a giant step forward, all right, I mean, depending on how giant that step is, at least you do know you might have a 22-point-a-night guy at this point if he's going to be able to put everything together. I mean, what is he now, 21, maybe 22 at this point? So that would be the X factor, almost like a fantasy football player that you draft knowing that he's going to be a little bit better than expected. You almost sort of hold on to him in a way that you're like, no one's expecting him to explode, and then all of a sudden he's the reason that your team has an extra 15 points that you weren't considering each game rather. That's kind of how I view Maxey, is almost like this hole up, this ace up your sleeve in a way that I don't think that people are necessarily ready for. I do love all of the regular season stuff, but I'm just never going to put any money on Philadelphia as a future to succeed in the playoffs until I see them even get to a finals game, because of the fact that they have Embiid healthy in the playoffs at that point, right? So I do want to ask a quick question about the Celtics, Nate, and what you were saying there. You kind of glossed over that really quickly where you said, I'm not buying them as a championship favorite. And I would agree. I mean, they got better. I think Malcolm Brogdon, the addition of him at point guard, it's exactly what everyone's been talking about for seasons on end, is they don't have a point guard and that's what they need. Does that unlock Jason Tatum? Something we might talk about in the MVP odds. Is there something to look at there? Is the addition of Brogdon not only going to be able to propel them forward a bit in their abilities? Is he going to propel the specific players on their team forward, like a Tatum and Jaylen Brown?
Yeah, but I'm concerned about what this is going to do to chemistry, because Malcolm Brogdon is better than Marcus Smart, and everybody in the world knows it except Marcus Smart. And then it's going to be some sort of point of contention where Marcus Smart refuses to come off the bench or not close games. Rob Williams already hurt coming into the season, but really it's about just the expectations and the way the Celtics, kind of thrived off that underdog role, about coming back from their rough start and to come into the season as championship favorites. I mean, you've already seen the owner try to throw some water on that, be like, no, we're not the favorites, because you don't want to come in with that bullseye. The way Tatum performed in the finals, it doesn't speak well when they are up like that. They need to thrive off that kind of underdog role for Udoka's coaching style, I think, to be most effective. And again, I have some concerns about the chemistry here and the roster construction, because with Rob out, the front court is extremely thin, and then they have 3 point guards now with Derek White still there. It could be an awkward fit at times.
That's fair, and I think the real question when we're talking about this specific bet is Bucks Celtics conference finals. Who are you taking right now? And I don't think we know enough about what the C's are going to look like with that roster construction as it is, as you mentioned, Nate. Obviously pretty thin, in the front court there, but now a lot to work with in the back court and some really lethal small ball lineups as well. So I think there's plenty of light. But would you take them against the Bucks? I know, Mo, you are thinking Bucks is the safest bet as well. I think pretty much everybody can resign themselves to the fact that in the Eastern Conference, that's what would be considered the safest bet to come out of the East. But it's because we've seen it with this exact team, and there's a lot of fluidity and change in that Eastern Conference. Do you consider the Bucks, should they be favored over the Celtics, let's say, right now, or are these odds pretty fair as you see them?
It's probably close. And I do like the Bucks. First off, I also want to say, I forgot to say this earlier, if James Harden is going in round 3 of your fantasy league, invite me to the league. I'll come play for sure. As far as the Bucks go, we know that an injury sank them last year. I think that pretty reasonable chance this is the best team in the NBA. They may have beaten the Celtics if they had Chris Middleton. They may have beaten the Warriors if they had Chris Middleton. And at plus 800, I'm interested in betting on them. It's the only plus 800 on the board. It's at DraftKings that I'm seeing. They're plus 600, plus 650 in a lot of other spots. I'd say one thing that I do like about the Bucks compared to the Sixers, for example, is coaching. I know Coach Bud has had his poor moments in the playoffs, but man, I don't trust Doc Rivers at all. That's one probably big strike against the Sixers for me. And we'll talk about another coach later, hopefully, when we get to the Western Conference that I'm liking even more potentially for a future. But Yeah, the Bucks just have such a strong roster. I wish they would have maybe added some pieces in the draft in recent years that could maybe take up some rotation minutes. I mean, Dante DiVincenzo is like the only guy they've drafted recently that really made any sort of difference for them, and then they shipped him off.
And he's about to make a big difference in the West, by the way, on the Warriors, which we'll talk about.
It's just like really bad when you see guys like Javon Carter playing minutes, bless his soul. But I don't know. Giannis he just takes you so far. And the Bucks are still such a machine. And so many of their good players are, tail end of their prime at least. The only player who's really like getting old and like probably declining in potentially serious fashion is Brook Lopez. I thought he was very good for them in their playoff run last year, though. And we know that big men tend to age a little better. They aren't as reliant on foot speed or anything like that. So, and when you are facing a small ball team, it's just so simple to switch to Giannis at center. So I just see this as a very complete team, and plus 800 on what might be the best team seems okay.
Which is why I think we aren't even mentioning the Brooklyn Nets, because even if everything kind of falls into place and they wind up in a playoff series against the Bucks with Ben Simmons playing, with Ben Simmons guarding Giannis, I still don't think that puts them over the top in that particular matchup. Right now they're half the price of the Sixers at plus 700 basically across the board. And I think you need a lot more to fall into place for that Nets future to in any way pay off. So many question marks about their roster and about the off-court issues that it doesn't really seem worth it early to bet that preseason at all. Maybe you hope for a few more things to look awry in the first month and for those odds to drop before you consider taking them in any way.
No, I would agree wholeheartedly with the Brooklyn take there. I'm not really touching. There's few teams I would even consider right now, putting money on based on these odds and the fact that as we speak about these numbers don't change too dramatically in the first month or two of the season. Obviously, there's going to be a team like the Warriors of last season going to come out go 10-0. They're going to go 20-5 or something to that degree, and really that'll decrease their odds. But the likelihood that a team like that stays at that pace is bad, so those odds will continue to fluctuate. You can find your right moment to pounce is kind of what we're thinking. I would say one team that I'd be worried about coming out super hot in the East, just to kind of close things, the two teams I think we do need to mention are the Hawks and the Cavaliers, mostly because they made such big offseason moves and really dramatically changed what their odds probably would have been if they hadn't made those moves. The Cavs get Donovan Mitchell. They get the offensive outburst that they need in tandem with Darius Garland to be able to hang offensively with the rest of those teams in the East. And then the same concept, I think, for Atlanta, maybe a little differently in sort of the reciprocal there. DeJounte Murray comes. He shores up that defensive backcourt tremendously, which was just god-awful with Huerter and Trae Young really manning that most of the season. So I think both of these teams, the Hawks at plus 4,500 right now on DK, and then you've got the Cavs at plus 3,000. Those are their championship odds. Any reason that you would consider that, I would just start by saying Atlanta, 4,500, I could see them coming out and being that 20-5 team where those odds go plummeting down to like 1,500, and you're kind of saying maybe it was worth it at 45 to take it. I couldn't see it being worth it at much shorter than 4,500, to be honest, but that number does come calling to me when I do love that backcourt tandem, and that front court remains very, very strong, and hopefully DeAndre Hunter stays healthy for that Hawks team.
Yeah, the problem with both of these teams, as I see it, is I just don't really want to trust teams that are built around small guards. The history of these teams in the playoffs is not good. When you get to the playoffs, teams don't do this in the regular season, but when you get to the playoffs, they're going to put their elite wing defenders on these guys, and then once they get slowed down, the offense kind of collapses in a lot of cases. And then on the other end, these players get targeted very, very heavily in pick and rolls. I just think Trae Young, I know he's just like a magician on offense, but man, it's just so hard to win with your best player-ish being able to be targeted like that. And then, on the other side, I do have a little more confidence in the Cavs, I would say, just because the way they built their front court can cover for some of the deficiencies of the back court. But again, you have two small guards leading the offense. I think the only way the Cavs really become a serious threat is to either land some sort of like wing somehow in the trade market, or Evan Mobley like more quickly makes a leap than I guess you could reasonably expect, to where he's a bigger focal point of the offense. I know Donovan Mitchell's been great in the playoffs, but man, the guy has had a lot of trouble staying healthy. I could see, this is a spot where I could see some early struggles, I guess, leading to getting a better price. I think you kind of touched on this when we were talking pre-show, Josh, because they have a lot to sort out ball handling wise between Mitchell and Darius Garland. So I could see some hiccups early on. You might get a better price if you wait a little bit on the Cavs.
Yeah, and I mean, they're experience-wise, they've got to be a year or two away from truly being title contenders. I mean, old guys are necessary to win the championship in the NBA. There's plenty of reason for optimism on their win total for either of those teams. I think they did take a big step forward this offseason, but as far as navigating the entire playoffs, I mean, you even look at a team like Memphis that is incredible, but very youth-laden and hasn't been able to navigate that so far. So, I mean, that is something to look at, though, as we switch here to look at the Western Conference, is those Grizzlies at plus 1,500. The continuity I talked about with the Bucks, sort of Bucks West, they maybe would have beaten the Warriors had Ja Morant not gotten hurt. That, for me, is the best value in terms of looking at the West, but also do like the Nuggets, a plus 2,100 at FanDuel because of what they can add to that lineup around Joker. There's just another big question mark in terms of health. But I think if you're looking at preseason, betting the Nuggets might be the best time to get that, because if Murray and Porter Jr. are out there playing, those odds are probably going to shorten.
Yeah, and I would also take this time real quick to say, like, make sure you're shopping these lines for sure, because as you mentioned, that 1,500 for the Grizz on FanDuel, on DK, on DraftKings, it's plus 2,200 for them to come out and win the championships. Definitely make sure you're checking that out. I mean, there's differences all across the board. The Bucks, for instance, are better bet that you get better odds there on your money on DK versus FanDuel. All over the board, there's plenty of lines to shop, and make sure you're comparing those things. But yeah, the Grizzlies are an interesting case. The Nuggets are an interesting case. I think the Nuggets are the team in the West that I consider similar to the Hawks, and what you just said in terms of I could see a hot start. And if you get a hot start out there for them, those odds are definitely going to decrease from the 1,900 or roughly 2,100 that you can get them on FanDuel right now. So definitely some things to consider for the Nuggies there. I think it's really interesting that we spent so much time talking about the East because there's so many teams in the East this year to talk about. I don't like as many teams in the West. Just going down the quick odds, you got the Clips at plus 600, the Dubs at plus 600. This is all DraftKings, so it's slightly varied on FanDuel and the other U.S. betting sites. But Warriors at plus 600 with the Clips, plus 1,200 for the Suns. I don't think anybody likes the Suns. That's the team in disarray. There's a number of players that are probably taking a step back. How long can Chris Paul be this good? Probably not too much longer. They didn't do enough, in my opinion, to get that team better. So they're getting older and not better. The Lakers at plus 1,800. I wouldn't bet on that with your money. And then you've got the Mavs at plus 2,000, which is where I start to feel interest, to be honest with you, because I'm not interested in a lot of everything I just said. Is there a team that I even just talked about, Mo, that would even tickle your fancy to consider a bet right now or in the next month or month and a half or so?
Yeah, definitely. Another one I'm targeting is actually the Clippers. I touched on this a little bit before. You can get them plus 800 right now at Caesars. I think it's pretty good. This team is built the way modern playoff winners are built, which is around two big wings, two-way wings, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. I've never been a fan, not a fan of Kawhi really, but I have to say, I mean, the guy's playoff success is undeniable. And I hinted at it earlier, but man, Tyronn Lue, I think, is one of the best coaches in the NBA. So we've seen him make big playoff adjustments and navigate different playoff series. I mean, dude, they put a scare into Phoenix with just, significantly weaker talent level without Kawhi a couple years ago. And then last year, obviously, just dealing with just a laundry list of injuries. They never had a real shot. But if Kawhi comes back close to what he was before, I mean, there's a reasonable chance this is the best team in the NBA. And what concerns me, obviously, about this team is kind of their tendency to play a little bit soft. Too many jumpers, not getting to the line, not getting to the basket, but possibly they're not going to let you get to the line or the basket either with these big wings. So, I do think plus 800 is maybe worth a stab here. It's tough, man. It's tough in the NBA. The NBA futures market, I just want to say, as we talk about some of these plus 2,000-ish teams, I wrote an article about this last year before the season. Only 2 teams since 1985 have won it all as plus 2,000 or longer prices in the NBA. It's not a sport where long shots are generally good. It's not a sport where contenders generally come out of nowhere. It's the most predictable North American sport, which is makes for a little bit of a boring discussion and show when we talk about these futures. But I do think plus 800 on the Bucks and the Clippers is not the worst. I mean, these are very, very talented teams. I'm interested in the Nuggets for sure, but I just don't know what you can. I don't know what you can expect out of Michael Porter. I don't know if that guy is he seems like he's chronically injured. I don't know, man. It's tough to rely on him.
He is, by the way, one of his legs is literally longer than the other one, creating back and hip problems every single day. I mean, look, as a dude who went to Mizzou and was rooting for this guy to help us actually do something in the tournament for that 1 year, he played 45 minutes all season, and most of that was at the end of it. Yeah, he's going to be continue to get injured. That's just the problem with it. And I would not at the beginning of this segment, I talked about the Nuggets being similar to the Hawks, and I could see them coming out hot. I'm not relying on Michael Porter Jr. to be the reason they do that. I just think they're a much better team than they've been in a long time. And if Murray is any form of himself as he has been in the past, then yeah, there's reason to like them. But the last team that we do need to at least briefly mention would be the defending champs, the team that obviously I know super well. They made some super nice offseason pickups and let go the players that they didn't really need. And I'm pretty proud of what they did. Bob Myers just continues to be a wizard. Dante DiVincenzo and JaMychal Green, by the way, another guy, 6'8", who's going to come in and be able to play some small ball 5. He's going to continue to get better. Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga, if one of them takes a leap, which I think Moses Moody is going to be your surprise minutes grabber on this team. Yes, Jordan Poole is going to come in and continue to do his thing as an offensive assassin. But I do think you're going to look at Moses Moody at the end of the year, a big guard who's going to really be able to guard 2 through 4, depending on who's on the floor. There's a lot to like about this team. Plus 600 doesn't really get me going in any way, shape, or form. I think that's the main reason that none of us have even decided to bring it up on this show, is the teams that we're talking about are closer to the plus 2,000 that we would consider. Even the Clips, I know you're talking about them, Mo. You like them a lot more, and that's fine. I still wouldn't consider it at the money that it is right now, but that's the problem with some of these championship futures in general. So I think there's plenty to like in both conferences, but I do also think that there's plenty to like in that MVP conversation, which is what we're going to have next. That is all the time that we have for you in this one. It's been a good amount of fun for me. I don't know, Mo, you said it might be a little bit boring talking about futures, but I'm having a pretty good time with you guys in this segment, talking about who we do think is going to come out of each conference. I think there's more parity in these conferences that we've seen in a long time, so it's going to be a pretty fun NBA season. Hopefully everybody stays healthy, knock on wood. So continue to follow along with us as we are, and like and subscribe rather to that YouTube page. We are going to be bringing you these videos leading up into the NBA regular season, and then once that season starts, every single weekday we'll have a couple videos for you and those NBA player props as well. So follow along, and until we see you next, happy betting.